Discovered. The incredible person who came to my rescue after brain surgery, my family's shock. Emily lay on the couch, the warmth of the afternoon sun flooding through the living room window highlighting the dust motes that danced in the air. Her head throbbed, an unwelcome reminder of her recent brain surgery. With each pulse of pain, a new wave of anxiety washed over her. The hospital bills loomed large, a black cloud suffocating her spirit. Questions spiraled around her mind. How was she going to pay for all this? How could she provide for Max when she felt like a shell of her former self? The vibrant life she had before felt like a distant memory, burdened under layers of responsibility and financial strain. Every keystroke on her laptop as she meticulously calculated her dwindling budget stung like a fresh wound. At 32, Emily had dedicated herself to raising her spirited 5-year-old, Max, while also nurturing her passion for teaching. It was supposed to be a fulfilling life, yet here she was, trapped in her inheritance, a home that felt more like a prison with its peeling wallpaper and cracked windows. The laughter of children from the nearby schoolyard barely reached her ears, replaced instead by the echo of her desolation. Emily's hopes felt like they swayed like the old swing set outside, deserted and hanging on by a thread. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Then the phone rang, shattering the monotonous silence. To her surprise, it was Mike, her estranged grandfather, the retired physician she had only met a handful of times. Disbelief coursed through her veins. Did he even know the turmoil she faced? Anger simmered just beneath the surface. How could he return now after years of absence? Yet there, tangled in her resentment, a flicker of hope stirred. Could he possibly help her in this time of need? As Mike stepped into her home for the first time in ages, the initial awkwardness loomed thick like fog. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he carried a bouquet of flowers, a gesture that felt inadequate yet earnest. With every shared story about his own struggles against the rigid prejudices of the medical world, Emily wrestled with conflicting emotions. The legitimacy of her grievances collided with the complexity of his past. Was it fair to expect the man, who had once abandoned her family, to step in as a savior? Each moment with Mike was a tightrope walk, forcing her to confront deep-seated beliefs about loyalty, justice, and merit. Old fears began to claw at her insides. The dread of becoming reliant on someone she barely knew, someone who had turned his back before. Decisions loomed. Could she let this man in, risking another betrayal? The wetness of her palms told her everything she needed to know. As the afternoon light waned, the tensions raised questions that seemed insurmountable. Could this tenuous reconnection be the answer to her desperate plea for support? Emily stared into the depths of her grandfather's weary eyes, searching for the assurance she craved, yet finding only an unsettling mirror reflecting her own uncertainties. In the shadows of the fading day, she felt the burden of unanswered questions settle heavily upon her chest. As the door of possibility creaked open, she knew that nothing would resolve itself easily. Could the knotted threads of their past be untangled? Would she find solace or further anguish on this precarious path? Secrets remained, choking the air between them, with both hope and fear intertwining in a dramatic dance. The journey ahead teetered towards the unknown, leaving her heart racing. Emily stood firm, caught in the surge of emotions that swirled around her and Mike. The flowers were a distraction, their vibrant colors stark against the somber tone of the room. She let out a shaky breath, grappling with how she truly felt. The rekindling of this relationship was another layer of complexity she hadn't anticipated in her already tumultuous life. "Thank you for coming, Mike," she said softly, her voice quaking as if testing the waters. The words felt heavy on her tongue, as if they held the weight of both reconciliation and expectation. He offered a tentative smile, his lined face revealing years of wisdom laced with sorrow. "I wish I could have been here sooner." His eyes searched hers, looking for understanding. Emily felt her heart thud in response. Could she find a way to understand him while also grappling with her own feelings of abandonment? As Mike recounted how the distance between them had grown, Emily couldn't shake off the input of her inner critic. This man had turned his back on her family at a pivotal time, and here he was expecting credit for merely showing up. Yet, the flicker of empathy disturbed her anger. Could she conquer her resentment enough to allow this connection a chance? Let us not dwell on the past, she finally said, her resolve hardening. I need to focus on what's next for Max and me. A wave of determination surged through her. If anything, this encounter could be transformative, igniting a latent strength within her. Hours later, Emily found herself drafting a list of potential paths forward. She needed a new direction, something actionable, to alleviate the suffocating weight of her financial obligations. In the quiet of her study, she scribbled ideas, feeling a flicker of excitement. Online tutoring, perhaps? Utilizing her teaching skills to reach beyond the small parameters of her day-to-day life could offer a much-needed lifeline. But it wasn't the external prospects that challenged her. It was the profound dilemma of embracing assistance without losing her autonomy. Deep down, she understood that pride might not pay the bills. Yet how could she navigate this without feeling as though she was surrendering? With each plan she formulated, the phone notifications from job postings sent tremors of urgency through her. Flexible hours and work from home blinked temptingly. What if she recruited Mike's expertise along the way? Emotional barriers pulsed within her like pulsing echoes. Could he provide guidance without stinging her with the guilt of dependence? As she encouraged herself to consider this, another thought rose. Was this newfound collaboration an opportunity to bridge the gap between them? Taking a deep breath, Emily leaned back in her chair, allowing vulnerability to rise momentarily. Perhaps a collaborative venture could forge a new foundation. That evening, she faced Mike once more, seated at the table with a faint glimmer of resolution in her eyes. What if we explored ways to work together? Your experience and my teaching there might be a way to help both of us. The silence stretched, pregnant with anticipation. Was Mike ready to dive into this partnership? She watched him process the idea, curiosity mixing with hope. When he finally met her gaze, she saw the same hesitant flicker hovering behind his eyes, the nuances of fear channeling into something raw that felt terrifyingly intimate. "I'd like that," he said slowly, "but it's important we're both willing to be vulnerable. There's a lot of healing to be done." Emily nodded, the words resonating. Healing didn't only apply to her physical recovery. It enveloped familial connections, once shattered. Still, uncertainty lingered. Could she rely enough on him to accompany her on this journey? As their thoughts danced around the visions of the future, the wind outside rustled the drapes. The next morning, after a restless night filled with dreams of plans both cautious and ambitious, the surprise of a looming confrontation gripped her. With each passing moment, the weight of how to address her grandfather's past only grew heavier. It was time to face the truth about their shared history, a confrontation of the heart that could go anywhere. As she stepped outside, determination surged anew, her steps a testament to her wish to reclaim her life. What truths waited just beneath the surface, ready to redefine their connection? The moment of confrontation loomed. Her heart raced at the thought of finally facing not only Mike but herself in this reflection of untold stories. Emily stood at the threshold of her grandfather's house, the door looming before her like an unyielding gate to a past she had been avoiding for so long. With her heart racing, she knocked, each rap against the wood echoing the uncertainty that churned within her. This was a pivotal moment, a chance to confront not only her grandfather, but the unresolved feelings that had taken root since her surgery. As the door creaked open, her grandfather's familiar features, though softened by age, stirred a torrent of conflicting emotions. Regret, love, anger, and an inexplicable yearning for connection all surged simultaneously through her. "Emily," he said, voice gravelly, eyes glinting with surprise. She glimpsed the warmth once shared between them but felt its cold shadow pressing down. "Can we talk?" she asked, the firmness of her voice surprising even herself. This was not to be a casual visit. It was a declaration of intent. The door swallowed her words as she stepped inside, letting the heavy atmosphere envelop her. They settled in the faded living room, where family photos framed memories that felt both distant and painfully close. Her grandfather shifted in his chair, eyes darting around the room as if seeking comfort in nostalgia. A silence hung thick between them, nearly suffocating. Emily clasped her hands together, metaphorically readying for battle. It's been a long time, she said, drawing strength from the memories of care she had received at the hospital. Those moments had birthed an innate resilience, a part of herself awakening with clarity amidst struggle. Her grandfather shifted uncomfortably, his features clouded with the complexity of unspoken words. I know things have been difficult, he finally admitted, the tremor in his voice betraying the facade he projected. But I need to understand why you chose to step away when we needed you the most, she pressed, determined to unearth the truth buried beneath layers of unresolved conflict. I had my reasons, Emily, he replied, frustration bubbling under the surface. You have to know that sometimes the past has a hold on people that's hard to shake off. And what about me? Her voice wavered, a sharp edge of vulnerability creeping in. I felt abandoned. You didn't just leave. You left me to navigate the hardest moments of my life on my own. Anger surged through her, an emotion she had tried to contain. It felt liberating yet terrifying to articulate. But she knew deep down that this was more than a confrontation. It was a demand for healing that charged silence. Revelations rippled through the air. Her grandfather's eyes glazed over, shadows of a troubled past flickering within. I was scared, Emily. I didn't want to relive my own failures. I didn't know how to be present for you when I couldn't even face my demons. His words struck a chord deep within her, revealing a vulnerability that mirrored her own. The frustration she directed at him morphed into a shared understanding of their battles. Here they were, two people tethered to the same painful history, yet fumbling in their attempts to heal lest they exchanged raw truths. Emily felt her years of resentment begin to dissolve, replaced by a profound sense of empathy. Yet she feared the fragile bridge they were building. Would it hold weight? Could she trust that this time would be different? Maybe we can find a way to support each other, Emily proposed cautiously, the notion of collaboration dawning on her like a new possibility. I can't do all this alone, and neither can you. Her grandfather met her gaze and nodded slowly, understanding the enormity of what lay ahead. With each word they exchanged, a small step was taken toward mending their estranged bond. As she walked away from that confrontation, something within her had shifted. Empowerment surged through her veins, mingling with a newfound courage. She was no longer shackled by the past but determined to forge a path forward. Back at home, the challenges awaiting her growled impatiently. The uncertainty associated with her collaboration with Mike loomed just as large, yet it felt more surmountable. Could their partnership be the catalyst for her transformation? With a resolute breath, Emily pulled out her notebook, the blank pages a canvas for her future. Each word she penned became a commitment not merely to herself but to forging new connections. Yet, amidst this hopeful momentum, lingering doubts whispered in the recesses of her mind. Was she truly ready to embrace such vulnerability with Mike? The thought sent ripples of anxiety coursing through her. Determined to explore this pivotal crossroads further, she dipped her pen back toward the paper, guiding her thoughts to yet another question. Could her collaboration with Mike be more significant than she anticipated, unraveling truths she had yet to discover? The moment of vulnerability approached, and her heart thudded, laden with possibility. The exploration of this connection, was it on the brink of affecting everything she thought she understood about herself? Emily awoke the next morning, the soft glow of the sun filtering through her curtains, gently pulling her from the depths of sleep. The confrontation with her grandfather replayed vividly in her mind, each moment woven together, a tapestry of emotions she had barely begun to unravel. She lay there, processing how her feelings of betrayal were intertwining with newfound empathy. As she prepared breakfast, she noticed how mundane the actions felt. Yet amidst this seemingly ordinary routine, a lingering thought pressed against her consciousness. This work with Mike, her desire to foster a partnership, brought a tinge of fear. What if she faltered in this commitment? Emily grabbed her notebook. Today was about taking charge, about setting the foundation for what came next. With a deep breath, she began to draft a plan for her collaboration with Mike. The words spilled onto the page, a combination of hopes and apprehensions. The thought of working alongside him filled her with excitement, but it was tempered by the fear of exposing herself too deeply, of revealing weaknesses she had not yet come to terms with. An ideal partnership was built on trust, but could she trust him? Would she be able to communicate openly without the walls she had constructed bubbling back to the surface? Pushing through the uncertainty, she listed her strengths. creativity, tenacity, the knack for problem-solving she honed through her battles both personal and professional. These were her badges of honor, symbols of all she had survived. Yet, another list began to form. What were her vulnerabilities? The fear of reliance, the skeletons of her past, and the overwhelming concern of being perceived as a fraud clouded her narrative. Each revelation left her feeling both liberated and exposed. The day passed with her mind flickering through the possibilities of their collaboration. She wrestled with two conflicting voices. One that urged her to dive headfirst into this partnership and another that warned her of potential pitfalls. Emily decided to confront the hesitation directly. To do this, she would need to delve into her past, excavating experiences that had led to her current hesitance. She opened the door to old journals, the yellowing pages a sacred archive of her thoughts. As she skimmed through entries detailing her struggles and triumphs, patterns began to emerge. Times when she had asked for help had often led to disappointment that played like a recurring nightmare. Yet, there were also moments of strength when seeking support bore fruit, like the care she received after her surgery, moments of clarity that opened up new avenues of self-discovery. Emily's pulse quickened as a revelation struck her with a crystalline clarity. The very experiences that anchored her insecurities also produced resilience. She was not merely a product of her past but also the architect of her future. This wasn't just about Mike. It was about her readiness to engage with herself and the world in new ways. The doorbell rang, breaking her reverie. It was Mike, smiling broadly, a bundle of energy that radiated through the interstice of their relationship. The anticipation of their meeting both thrilled and terrified her. She closed her notebook, concealing the burden she had laid bare on the pages, resolving to approach this collaboration with authenticity. As she stepped outside, heart pounding, she scanned the landscape of possibilities that lay before her. This was a chance for growth, a potential partnership that could not only transform her professional life, but also heal deeper wounds she had harbored within. But the moment felt fraught with both opportunity and danger. "Are you ready?" Mike asked, and his question sent a ripple through her core. Was she truly prepared to embrace the unknown? The moment of connection hovered like the dawn before the first light breaks through. "Ready as I'll ever be," she replied, forcing a smile to mask her uncertainty. But a part of her knew that this was where her real journey began, an exploration into not only the dynamics of their partnership but her own resilience, confronting what lay beneath the surface. As they walked toward the car, a shiver of trepidation mixed with excitement, Emily felt the weight of her past shifting. The pivotal question lingered. Would facing her vulnerabilities with Mike strengthen her or expose her more painfully? Their first project awaited, and Emily's heart raced with the thrilling uncertainty of new beginnings. Her commitment to exploring this partnership ignited a flame of resolve, one she hoped would guide her through the challenges that lay ahead. She couldn't help but wonder if this was the true moment for her transformation, or the beginning of a more complicated struggle. What awaited them both? The uncertainty of their collaboration stood at the brink, ready to unravel hidden truths neither of them had anticipated. As Emily settled into the passenger seat of Mike's car, anticipation mingled with the remnants of her earlier doubts. She caught his eye, his enthusiasm radiating like a beacon, and somehow it anchored her in the present. Here, she thought, was the start of a new chapter, a chapter colored by hope but tinged with the pastel shades of hesitation. Their first project was ambitious, ideally suited for the strengths she had listed earlier. Yet, every time they reviewed the project outline Mike had prepared, anxiety clawed at her throat. Questions flooded her. What if her ideas proved inadequate? What if she failed to meet his expectations? Would he see her as the imposter she feared she was? Mike began discussing strategies, enthusiasm edging toward passion. "Emily, if we focus on the narrative we want to create around this, we can really push the boundaries of what we've done before. I want us to take creative risks. What do you think?" His energy was contagious, and she felt a tentative spark ignite within her. "Absolutely," she said, her voice betraying a hint of uncertainty, but she quickly steeled herself. This was her moment to shine, and she wasn't going to hide behind her apprehension. She resolved to elevate her voice in their shared dialogue. "The concept revolves around harnessing personal stories to connect with the audience," she added, surprising herself with the steadiness of her tone. "What if we incorporated elements from our lives? Stories of vulnerability, of overcoming challenges. As she spoke, a sense of liberation washed over her. In the past, she had guarded her vulnerabilities closely, seeing them as weaknesses. Today, however, as she articulated a vision that meant something intimate to her, Emily began to see those experiences as avenues of strength. The burden she carried could be transformed into stories that resonated with others. Mike nodded vigorously, his expression encouraging. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's about creating an authentic connection. However, a momentary stillness encased them, and Emily could almost feel the door of transparency creaking open between them. Have you ever had a story that you thought was too personal to share? She ventured, the question spilling out before she could comprehend why she had asked it. Mike paused, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his features. Actually, I have a few. You think you're alone in feeling that way, but it turns out everyone carries their scars. The challenge is knowing when it's time to let others in. His gaze softened, and something within her resonated with that admission. Encouraged by his openness, Emily leaned in. I think confronting our vulnerabilities could be the cornerstone of not just our project but of our partnership, too. Together, we could create something relatable, not just a product but a conversation. Yet as she put herself out there, doubts began to creep back. Would he actually view her as a partner, or simply as someone filling a role? As the thoughts collided in her head, Emily felt the familiar tension knotting her stomach. The conversation shifted, and Mike asked about their timelines for project milestones. But behind his cheerful banter, the undercurrents of her own unease surged vigorously. What if collaboration meant demanding more from each other than they were both equipped to give? The drive to the location felt longer than usual. Surrounded by the hum of the city, Emily's mind spiraled. She had thrust herself forward, and now she grappled with the consequence. The fragility of her own courage. Arriving at their destination, she could feel both excitement and dread mingling in her chest. As they stepped out of the car, Emily resolved to take the plunge deeper. With every project milestone approached, every vulnerability faced, she knew she would be required to confront herself. They were just beginning to scratch the surface, and yet already shadows of personal dilemmas stirred within her. Where to next? Mike asked, practically bouncing on the balls of his feet, the epitome of optimism. Caught off guard, Emily hesitated. She realized that the next step wasn't just about the project, but about whether she could remain vulnerable and authentic with him. Let us talk about our backstories and how they might inform our work, she replied, her voice steadier now, though a flicker of doubt still lingered. This was a pivotal moment, and as Mike led the way, a part of her grappled with the fear of uncovering too much too soon. But behind that fear lay the compelling urge for honest connection and growth. It was time to confront what had been hidden for too long. No turning back now. As they walked toward the project space, Emily felt the weight of her past shift again, alongside an undeniable thrill. They were on the precipice of unearthing shared stories, while she faced the daunting reality of self-discovery. The real question loomed. Would she emerge transformed, or would her struggles pull her under? Mike's laughter echoed as they entered, but Emily's heart raced with the tension of what lay ahead. A collaboration filled not just with professional ambition but personal revelations that could either shatter or forge a bond. The intimacy of exploration posed both a risk and a promise, and she couldn't quite predict where it would lead them next. The bustling atmosphere of the project space enveloped Emily like a thick fog, each voice reverberating with potential yet threatening her fragile sense of self. As they stepped inside, she took a deep breath, trying to will herself into the present. The stark white walls, adorned with sketches and sticky notes, spoke of creativity and possibilities. But her mind swirled with the memories of past failures, the inadequacies that scratched at her resolve like relentless pests. Mike was an animated silhouette, buoyed by vision, while Emily felt like an anchor weighing him down. She knew she had to dig beneath the surface, to be more than just the person filling a role. The stakes were rising, not just professionally but deeply personally, and it was time to lean into this moment. Could she transform her insecurities into something beautiful, something meaningful? Mike proposed they start with creative brainstorming. Let us put everything out on the table. Free associations, anything goes, he said, wide-eyed with enthusiasm. Emily admired his energy, yet it felt like a double-edged sword. The room was charged with expectations, and part of her yearned to hide behind the vibrant canvas Mike had laid out. "Okay," she replied, her voice gaining strength with every distinction she made. "Let us also incorporate our fears. In grounding ourselves in vulnerability, we may craft narratives that truly resonate." His gaze turned contemplative. That essay bold move, but one that could really connect with people. He began sketching ideas frantically, and with each stroke, envisioning a bridge between their authentic selves and the audience they hoped to reach. Emily watched, internalizing the nuances of his passion but also questioning her fit in this vision. Was she genuinely brave enough to take on this emotional risk? Seeing Mike's enthusiasm pushed her to reflect on her story, the story she always felt reluctant to share. The struggles she wished were buried and forgotten. Her hesitance in revealing her past resonated with her. How could she share her vulnerabilities while still feeling so raw? Was it acceptable to merge personal experiences with professional aspirations? Have you ever been afraid to take a leap? Emily wondered aloud, her voice softer, revealing fragments of her inner conflict. Constantly, he admitted, meeting her gaze with an earnestness that surprised her. "Every time I push boundaries, I feel that dread. But then I remember that growth requires risk. Without it, we're stagnant." Stagnation. The word echoed in Emily's mind. She had spent too long stagnating, trapped beneath layers of fear and comparison. As they continued brainstorming, something in her shifted. Words began to form, ideas morphed, and for the first time, she dared to dip into her own experiences. "What if we include snippets of our childhood?" Emily proposed, emboldened by the spark emanating from Mike. "Moments that shaped us, our fears, secret aspirations." He nodded, excitement peaking, but Emily grappled with the weight of exposing herself. Yet as she saw Mike's eagerness, she realized the beauty of sharing these truths might also reflect facets of her journey, strengths forged in adversity. For too long, she had dismissed these experiences as vulnerabilities. The thought of softening the edges of fear, welcoming raw narratives, suddenly made the prospect of collaboration thrilling rather than terrifying. A wave washed over her, a clarity that drew her closer to this moment. She began sharing her childhood, how isolation had shaped her, and how art had been both her fortress and her prison. Word by word, she fought against a lifetime of insecurity. As they bounced ideas back and forth, Emily felt a surge of energy she hadn't anticipated. Each exchange not only strengthened the project, but also illuminated paths within herself. What had once been agony began morphing into empathy, not just for herself but toward the audience they aimed to reach. The two engaged in intense conversation, articulating discomforts, and by revealing personal fears, the spaces between them shrank. It was a risk she hadn't expected to take so boldly on this very first day. Yet, here she was, preparing to lay bare her authentic self for Mike and inevitably, for a broader audience. As they wrapped up their brainstorming session, a mix of exhilaration and apprehension settled on Emily's shoulders. Had her transparency shifted their partnership dynamically? Would Mike still see her as a robust collaborator rather than a fragile companion? She felt empowered, yet gnawing doubts remained. "Let us take a break," Mike suggested, raising the prospect of sharing a meal to further discuss their personal ties to the project. As Emily followed him to the cafe nearby, she questioned whether these leaps of faith would lead to liberating connection or expose her to crushing vulnerability. Relationships often teetered on the edge of discovery and disaster in equal measure. The way forward was hazy, but it gleamed with potential. What further truths would surface in their discussion, and could she muster the courage to reveal even more? As they entered the cafe, the scent of roasted coffee enveloped them, intensifying her sense of uncertainty. Would the conversation allow her to explore another layer of her past? Or would it shatter the fragile connection they were building? The dance of vulnerability was only just beginning. The cafe buzzed with subdued chatter, the soft clinking of ceramic cups providing a rhythmic backdrop to Emily's spiraling thoughts. She slid into a corner table, discreetly observing the bustle around her while wrestling with the vulnerability that had surfaced. Mike settled across from her, the coffee shop warmth juxtaposed with the chill of her uncertainty. "Let us revisit what sparked your interest in art," he prompted, leaning forward as he sipped his espresso. The confident glint in his eyes jolted her from her internal dialogue. Emily's lips parted as memories reverberated within her, a childhood moment that had shaped her identity. I was always drawing, creating worlds where I felt I belonged, she began, surprised at how easily the words left her mouth. Art became my refuge, especially when I struggled to connect with others. Mike listened intently, and in his silence she found unexpected safety. But then there came a point where I realized those worlds weren't just for me. They could resonate with others too. With each word, Emily peeled back layers she had long buried, both fear and fascination coursing through her. But did you ever feel exposed? Like showing your work meant showing your soul? He asked, eyes narrowing slightly. Absolutely, she replied, her voice steadying with each revelation. It terrified me to think of how people might judge my art just like I've judged myself. A recent echo of a critic's words bubbled to the surface. Was it really back then that she had chosen to hide? Though a flicker of doubt lingered, a deeper honesty emerged. There, in the intimate cafe space, with Mike's unwavering focus, Emily felt a subtle empowerment teasing at her edges. But sharing my art became more than vulnerability. It transformed into a responsibility to inspire. She continued, the weight of this breakthrough washing over her. Transforming fears into strengths that's powerful, Mike mused, his tone almost reverent. You're well on your way to mastering this melding of personal experiences into professional ambitions. Mastery. The word sent a rush through her veins. Moments of self-doubt still lingered, but this was her chance. She was beginning to see the threads connecting her past to the narrative they were crafting together. There was an urgency building within her, a drive to uncover more. So let us push further. Why not deepen into the most painful experiences? She suggested, emboldened. Who says we can't part with the fear of judgment and reveal raw narratives that truly resonate? Mike's gaze flickered, an unspoken question bubbling just beneath the surface. Are you sure you want to go there? Yes, she answered, resolve finding its home in her tone. I want to confront the shadows rather than linger in their shadow. The moment felt pivotal as Mike's expression shifted, reflecting not just acceptance, but also a growing respect for her bravery. That's going to take significant courage. Are you ready to risk everything? I am, she asserted, her heart racing but steady. Let us create something that honors who we are, without pretense. We have to allow our fears to be the ink for our narrative. Their conversation surged, ideas spiraling as they fleshed out sketches of the project. Emily began pointing out her own experiences where vulnerability had shifted from pain to profound connection, how her isolation crafted her voice, and how embracing it could inspire others. Each shared experience transformed their dialogue into a bridge, one she once thought impossible to build. But as they departed the cafe, the resonance of transformation began to take a different turn. Mike's confidence seemed to dabble into a realm of authority that made her skin prickle. Was he now more determined to lead? The thought gnawed at her as they walked alongside each other, both excited yet cautious. An internal dilemma lingered. Would she maintain her voice or risk losing herself in his vision? The slightest hint of possessiveness from Mike threatened the fragile balance they had forged. The steps they took felt heavier as they approached the project space, shadows of doubt creeping back into her mind. How could she continue to assert her role, while reveling in their collaborative synergy? Would she be an equal creator, or would she slip into the background? The foundational questions loomed uncomfortably in her thoughts, a haunting reflection of her past struggles. Time was her ally, but were they aligned in their vision? As they reached the entrance, Emily stood momentarily paralyzed by the unseen precipice before her. What pivotal choice would she make in claiming her space? The next step was critical. The moment of truth awaited, and she held her breath, steeling herself to venture beyond fear and into her newfound role. Would this journey redefine her artistry, or would it push her to the brink of self-doubt once again? Emily inhaled deeply, the scent of freshly painted wood and lingering coffee intertwining in the air, grounding her senses as she stepped over the threshold into the workspace. It was more than a mere room. It was a blank canvas awaiting the strokes of creativity they were about to unleash. Yet, the thrill of possibility was tinged with unease. Mike strode in beside her, the confident bounce in his step a stark contrast to the churning anxiety within her. Confidence was alluring, but in that moment it felt like a double-edged sword. Would his assertiveness uplift them or overshadow her voice? Her mental scars from past collaborations threatened to resurface, raising questions about power dynamics. Let us get started, he said. the eagerness in his voice both inspiring and slightly intimidating. He moved toward the large table strewn with art supplies, his back turned to her as he began arranging paintbrushes and canvas. Watching him, Emily felt a mixture of admiration and apprehension. She picked up a paintbrush, fingers shaking slightly, testing its weight as if it were something more significant than just a tool. "Hey, Mike," she began, hesitating. The words felt significant, a prelude to a pivotal moment. "Can we set some ground rules for this collaboration?" He paused, his back stiffening ever so slightly. "What do you mean?" His tone suggested surprise, perhaps disappointment. It was evident he hadn't thought about the mechanics of their partnership. He was too caught up in the excitement of creation. "I just think we should clarify how we want to divide responsibilities. I want my voice to be equally represented in what we create," she pressed, trying to keep her tone level despite the thrum of insecurity in her chest. Mike turned, eyes narrowing thoughtfully as he assessed her request. "Of course," he replied, but it felt rehearsed, a defensive tone lurking in his response. "I just assumed we'd naturally find our roles as we go. Assumptions can lead to miscommunication," she countered gently, feeling a surge of determination. The spark of defiance reignited in her. She was here to stake her claim, not just to drift in someone else's current. After a moment's silence, a flicker of respect coursed through his gaze. "Fair point. Let us define how we want to communicate ideas and share creative space. I'm open to that." Emboldened by his concession, Emily nudged the discussion deeper, outlining her vision of shared authorship. They began discussing themes, diving into the motivations that had guided her artistic journey. Personal anecdotes emerged, each story a thread woven into the fabric of their collaboration. An emotional canvas started to take shape, echoing the theme of vulnerability that resonated throughout her art. As they talked, Emily realized how liberating it felt to articulate her desires and boundaries. The lingering uncertainty faded with each dialogue, her voice growing more assertive. Speaking about her past empowered her, and she could feel their partnership forging in the crucible of honesty. Yet, in the back of her mind, an anxiety nestled. Would he truly embrace this newfound shared space? Or would he revert to his dominant tendencies when the creative challenges intensified? Her thoughts raced through scenarios, some hopeful, others bleak. Just then Mike interjected. "What if we captured the essence of our fears in the work? It might strike a chord with our audience," he suggested, the spark of creativity illuminating his face. The notion struck her. Yes, it's not just the fear of judgment but the job of channeling that fear into something potent. It could be our narrative hook. The energy shifted palpably as they began to brainstorm. Emily felt the ebb and flow of their ideas, each one feeding into the other like a well-rehearsed dialogue. Still, a sliver of doubt gnawed at her. Would their joint vision align when the work became laborious? The initial thrill of collaboration masked deeper questions that demanded answers. As their celebration of progress filled the air, Emily felt both excitement and hesitance tighten around her heart. It was exhilarating, yes, but was she prepared for the emotional stakes? The framing of their first piece emerged as a real test, a representation both of their struggles and hopes. Would it be a true reflection of their shared experience, or merely a facade hiding her deeper fears? Moments later, as they readied canvases and mixed colors, Emily confronted the question she had secretly avoided. What if revealing her authentic self meant dismantling the tentative balance between them? With tension thickening in the air, Emily caught Mike's gaze across the table, the unsaid implications hanging between them like a live wire. Would she find the strength to reveal her true self, or would this artistic endeavor push her deeper into uncertainty? The moment of clarity she craved seemed on the horizon, and as brushes touched canvas, she felt the precipice beckoning once more. She knew either step could lead to liberation or potential heartbreak, and she was about to find out which. As the brush met the canvas, an electric charge surged through Emily, pulsing with anticipation and dread. Each stroke felt heavy with implications, a reminder of both her artistic aspirations and the vulnerability that surfaced in creative partnership. The colors twirled and mixed, bleeding into one another, forming an abstract representation of her inner conflict. Mike worked beside her, his brow furrowed in concentration as ideas darted between them like fireflies in the dusk. Yet, with each brushstroke, Emily was aware that the groundwork they had laid, the discussions about Their fears and hopes now hung delicately in the balance. Would this collaboration serve both their visions? Or was she setting herself up for another scenario of overshadowing? Let us experiment with the palette, Mike suggested, breaking her reverie. How about incorporating darker tones to symbolize fear? Emily hesitated, the suggestion digging at her defenses. Dark colors can symbolize many things, she replied, voice steadier than she felt. They can denote despair, but they can also represent strength in overcoming challenges. Doubt flickered in Mike's expression before he nodded slowly. You're right. Could capture that duality. Strength through fear like a phoenix rising. The metaphor struck a chord with Emily, intensifying the flood of memories seated in her past. She reminded herself that this wasn't just a creative exercise. It was a reflection of her journey. Art had been the lifeboat that had kept her afloat, the voice that had spoken when she felt silenced. Yet, the potential of exposing her scars felt daunting. Do you think the words stumbled from her lips before she could rein them in? Do you think the audience will understand if we inject our vulnerabilities into this piece? Mike considered her question, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Our fears are universal, he replied. We might hit a nerve. But isn't that the goal? To resonate with the audience on a deeply personal level? His answer resonated. Deep down, Emily knew the right move was to push through her trepidation. The act of creation could be a form of catharsis, not just for herself but for those who would gaze upon their work. She took a breath, grounding herself in the moment, letting the paint guide her thoughts. Suddenly, the tension of the room shifted, an unspoken recognition of the stakes enveloped them. Would they embrace this vulnerability, or would it crumble under the pressure of expectation? She glanced at Mike, his features revealing the complexities of emotion swirling within him, paralleling her own. There's something deeper at play here, isn't there? She mused, breaking the silence that had thickened. It's not just about artistry. It's about connection. Mike wasn't quick to respond. Instead, he concentrated on the canvas, as if he were sifting through his thoughts. The stillness felt loaded, and Emily felt their shared hesitance intermingle like paint on the palette. It was a pivotal moment, one that could define not only their artistic journey but their personal paths as well. With renewed resolve, she began to articulate her deepest fear. What if we fail to convey our message? Her throat tightened. What if in trying to portray strength, we inadvertently showcase our insecurities? Mike turned, a flicker of empathy softening his features. But what if exposing those insecurities is precisely what makes the art powerful? Our audience may relate to that struggle, to that rawness. Emily felt a wave of understanding wash over her. This was the crux of their collaboration. A commitment to honesty, a canvas that bared not just surface beauty, but the scars of life's battles. Yet doubt still lingered. A nagging voice whispering that perhaps revealing too much could facilitate judgment over unity. Would Mike remain receptive when discussions became uncomfortable? Let us make a pact, she proposed, searching his eyes for steadfast assurance. No matter how hard it gets, we communicate openly about what feels right in the creation process. He nodded, a resolute expression setting upon his face. I'm on board with that, he affirmed, showing clear intent. Let us not only capture the art, but embody the essence of who we are in the work. Empowered by this agreement, Emily dipped her brush into the darker hues, recalling the flickers of light that intermingled with despair. There on the canvas, she would carve their story, both strengths and insecurities entwined like threads in a complex tapestry. But as they continued to paint, she caught herself glancing at Mike more often, searching for signs of any retreat from their shared exploration. Could this pact they made withstand the fire of creation, the potential disagreements, conflicting visions, and emotional rawness that awaited them? With the colors melding on the canvas and emotions swirling in the air, Emily knew their journey had only just begun. As she finished the last stroke of the day, a new gale of trepidation crashed over her. What would it mean to delve deeper into their truths? And would their partnership survive the artistry of confrontation and revelation? And just as he turned to her, a possibility shadowing his gaze, she recognized that the foundation they were building was still incredibly fragile. Would they rise together, or fracture when the reality of their vulnerabilities pressed too deeply? She felt the answer elude her, a far-off echo waiting to resonate amid the turmoil they were yet to face. Emily stood before the canvas, the scent of paint mingling with the remnants of anxiety and exhilaration that buzzed through the air. Hours of shared creativity had transformed not just the space around her, but her very understanding of vulnerability. Each stroke had captured fragments of her journey's strength intertwined with scars, fears transformed into aspirations. And yet, amid the beautiful chaos, a storm of apprehension brewed. She glanced at Mike, absorbed in the work they had crafted together. His passion radiated, igniting further ambition in her. But shadows loomed. Would their collaboration endure the weight of honesty? Had they built enough trust to navigate the emotional landmines that lay nestled beneath their vibrant artwork? As they prepared for their first presentation, the stakes felt astronomically high. They had decided to unveil their collaborative piece at a local arts gathering, a moment meant to showcase the profound depth they had created. Emily's heart raced, shadows of self-doubt creeping back in. What if the revelations they had poured into their art were met with criticism? What if they missed the mark? Sensing her anxiety, Mike approached and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. What we've created is powerful, Emily. It's raw, it's real, and that's what art is meant to be. She met his gaze, searching for the confidence she desperately yearned to feel. The strength in his eyes ignited a spark within her. Wasn't this the very essence of their journey together? Confronting their fears, embracing vulnerability side by side. And now they stood on the brink of sharing it with the world. As they arrived at the venue, a bustling hub of creativity, alive with energy, Emily embraced a heightened sense of purpose. The art displayed around her stirred emotions, stories waiting to be told. This was the moment to not only showcase their work but to stand tall in their truth, and possibly catalyze conversations that could resonate with others facing similar struggles. The room began to fill with attendees, and the anticipation thickened in the air. Emily exchanged nervous glances with Mike, her pulse fluttering. Would they dive deep into discussions around their piece? Would anyone relate to the intricate layers of their story? As the time for presentation drew near, she closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, allowing herself to reflect on how far she had come. No longer shackled by the ghosts of her past, she felt a renewed sense of authenticity surging within her. Emily had spent years bearing the weight of self-doubt and fear, and yet here she was, ready to expose her journey to a roomful of strangers. Finally, the moment arrived. As they stood in front of the canvas that bore their intertwined stories, the vibrant hues symbolizing pain and strength juxtaposed harmoniously, they articulated their shared journey's significance. Emily spoke openly about the vulnerability she had embraced throughout their collaboration, how each drawn line represented not just struggles but triumphs. She could feel an invisible thread pulling the audience closer. Their curiosity piqued. Art is a conversation, she explained. It challenges us to bare our souls, to find power not just in ease, but in discomfort. This piece embodies that duality. Mike chimed in, weaving in his own reflections about fear and resilience, demonstrating their shared commitment to authenticity. The more they spoke, the more Emily felt the shackles of self-doubt crumble. As the discussion progressed, something remarkable began to happen. Engagement sparked in the room, voices contributing thoughts and connections that mirrored their struggles. It flowed seamlessly. The audience responded with their own stories, demonstrating that Emily and Mike were not alone in their vulnerabilities. At that moment, Emily realized the transformative power of shared experiences. She had proven to herself that confronting insecurities could spark a very powerful dialogue, not only within herself but within a community seeking authenticity. As applause erupted at the end of their presentation, Emily's heart swelled. She felt recognized not just for her artistic talent, but for her courage to embrace her journey fully. The acknowledgement was gratifying, a validation of her growth and commitment to nurturing her artistic voice. She no longer stood in the shadows, overwhelmed by the daunting expectations of others. Instead, she stood tall, ready to embrace the complexity of her narrative while leading others in understanding theirs. Returning home after the event, exhaustion hovered like a familiar haze, but within her thrummed something profoundly more potent: confidence. She had ventured beyond what once felt impossible, accomplishing a significant personal achievement. This marked not just a professional milestone but a turning point in her life. She had forged meaningful connections through honesty and artistic expression. In those moments of triumph, Emily recognized the unwavering strength that lay within her. She released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She didn't just survive her hardships, she conquered them, emerging resilient and powerful. As she settled into bed that night, a surge of satisfaction washed over her. This was her moment, a celebration of personal growth and the recognition of her worth. Emily had achieved the vitality she sought, grounded in authenticity and courage that would follow her into her future endeavors. And in that realization, she understood the importance of vulnerability and connection. These wouldn't merely remain abstract notions, they would become the lifeblood of her creativity moving forward. Now, here's where you come in. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can inspire your own journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment below to share your reactions and theories about Emily's incredible transformation. Share the video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and understand the power of personal overcoming stories. This is the moment to show your support, and don't wait even one more second to share your insights. Your engagement is what keeps these powerful conversations going.